Welcome to Vermont's Voice, your source for the public interest conversation in the State House and beyond. I'm your host, Jordan Heiden. Throughout this series, we'll be investigating some of Vermont's most pressing issues by connecting with leaders and community members all around the state. Together, we'll learn, laugh, and explore opportunities for grassroots action to keep Vermonters engaged and to keep Vermont cool. Today, I'm sitting down with Becca White, Vermont State Senator of Windsor District. Together, we'll talk about new bills, organizing tips and takeaways, and Senator White's district delights. I'll also be joined by my co-producer Josh, who has an important update on transportation. This is Vermont's Voice. So, Josh, you are sitting with me in front of the camera today, as opposed to where you usually are as co-producer behind the scenes. What is that feeling like?
Well, Jordan, I got to admit, I'm a little bit excited and a whole lot of nervous.
Well, no worries, because what I can tell you from my very extensive experience of being in exactly one podcast episode, that there's actually not that much to be worried about. So I think that should solve your problems.
I'll definitely lean on that experience today.
Okay, cool. And from my view here, you seem pretty confident. You've got this nice shirt and jacket combo. Like, I feel like you're just ready to go.
I really appreciate that, Jordan.
Yes.
You can get yours at VPIRG.store.
Okay, very cute, casual one. I guess while we're on the subject of that, what I can do is tell our listeners that if you want this shirt, and if you can't see what Josh is wearing right now, it says protect our pollinators. It's got this nice colorful bee. What he's wearing is navy blue, but you could also get it in yellow along with lots of other shirts and things on that store. But we are not actually here to talk about shirts.
Unfortunately.
So we could probably talk about it all day, but I'd like to pivot because you actually have a pretty important update on transportation, which we will get to in a moment.
Okay,
but
good.
Before that, I do have an important question for you.
I'm ready.
Okay. Did you watch the Super Bowl on Sunday?
Only for 3.5 hours.
Okay, cool. I watched for exactly 15.
Oh, which
was the halftime show.
Of course.
Yeah. So fill me in on what happened during the game.
Well, I'm not a football fanatic, but what I can tell you is the Chiefs had a devastating loss.
Do you know the score?
42-3, 42-6. I'm not sure. Remember
it was a lot.
I think the Chiefs had at least 20 points by the end.
Well,
Okay.
I wasn't watching by the end, respectfully.
Wasn't that close, though, is what I'm gathering?
I think we're clearly not sports people.
Right. Yeah, we're probably not the right people to talk to about this. Okay, well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
But you watched the halftime show.
I did.
Okay. What did you think?
Times. It was left me speechless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, me personally, I am a big Kendrick Lamar fan, so I did tune in just for that. Thought it was great. It must be a devastating time to be Drake. Would you agree?
Ooh, I'm getting shivers just thinking about Drake's
Being
status
Drake.
right now. Yeah.
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 Yeah, no, that's tough. And just for some context for those who are not acutely tuned into this, Kendrick Lamar and Drake, both rappers, have some pretty intense beef going on. Kendrick Lamar did receive multiple Grammys for his diss track about Drake. And so that's tough. He's having a tough time because now that song was also performed during the Super Bowl. It's just a lot. So that's what I think about when I wake up is even if I spill my coffee or I'm having a tough morning, at least I'm not Drake.
And we're better off for it.
Right, exactly. And I did also want to mention that there were a ton of people watching and in person at this particular game, right? I mean, that's what happens during Super Bowls, but some people of note, right? Taylor Swift was there. I heard she got booed, which is
jarring.
Yeah,
I don't know
right?
why.
Surprising. And she was with Ice Spice, who is another performer, right? And of course, President Donald Trump.
The infamous.
Yeah, which I don't know if that's typical or not. If you see that commonly at sports games, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You know, I had heard that he is the first sitting president to attend a Super Bowl game.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Okay. So that is a little surprising, I guess.
Surprise. Another surprise, speaking of President Trump, is just recently he announced that he was going to be cutting billions of dollars in EV infrastructure money that was sourced through the Inflation Reduction Act.
Okay, well, that's a less fun surprise.
Whoopsies.
But feels important to know, right?
Yeah.
And this is a perfect segue because you are here to talk about transportation and you kind of queued that up perfectly.
You caught me red-handed.
And I think we've talked enough about the Super Bowl because we clearly don't
know anything about it.
So I'll just let you take it from here. If that works.
Thank you for teeing that up for me. Through my work at VPIRG, I am advocating for transportation, the transportation sector. And really what that means is I'm at the State House talking to legislators about EV incentive money, public transit, and bike infrastructure and bike incentives. For the past 5 years, thousands of low-income Vermonters have been able to gain access to cars that are typically out of their price range through these incentives.
Wow.
These incentives are important for a handful of reasons, right? The transportation sector is really starting to trend towards electric vehicles. And as of last year in 2024, 14% of the new car market in Vermont were electric vehicles. And these incentives ensure that low-income Vermonters have a share in that market, which is really important. You know, we talk about affordability. It's all we've heard from our elected officials for the past few months. These incentives are how we ensure that nobody is left behind during the green transition. You all may have heard that this thing called the California Clean Cars Act.
I've definitely heard about it. Not sure if our listeners.
That's okay. Vermont is one of about 20 states who have signed on to this act.
Well,
and the goal is that by about 2035, all new cars imported to dealerships in the state will be electric vehicles.
Wow.
Yeah. And this isn't just good climate policy. It's a good affordability policy too. EVs are dropping dramatically in price as more and more batteries are being developed and more people want these cars. The price is dropping sometimes 20% in a year.
Wow.
And so the Clean Cars Act doesn't just ensure that we are going to achieve our emissions goals, but it ensures that by the time electric vehicles are cheaper than gas cars, we will be requiring manufacturers to bring the cheapest cars in the market to Vermonters.
I think that's really great context for now, so early in the session. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll let you get back to it.
Thanks for having me, Jordan.
I'm sitting down today with Becca White, Vermont State Senator of Windsor District. Now, Becca White's journey to the State House began in 2018 when she ran for and was elected as Vermont State Representative. She served in that position for 4 years and then was elected to Vermont State Senator in 2023. Now, she's been keeping plenty busy, and right now she's Vice Chair of the Senate Committee on Transportation, as well as a member of the Senate Committee on Government Operations. That wasn't enough. She's also on the Senate Sexual Harassment Prevention Panel and co-chair of the Climate Solutions Caucus. Before all of that, though, she also used to work for VPIRG as a summer canvasser, which of course we will be getting into at some point too. So it is completely beyond me, Senator White, how you were able to find the time to do this podcast episode with us today, but I am truly so grateful. And I just want to say welcome to Vermont's Voice.
Thank you. Yay, VPIRG. I like being back at the offices.
Yeah, what does it feel like being back? It's been a while.
It's been a while. As I entered, I was immediately filled with the nostalgia. I liked seeing all the brochures that everyone used to hand out that I recognize immediately. So that was nice. Yeah.
Good.
And the space looks good.
You like it?
I do.
And do you like that you're part of this space?
I do.
Some old.
Yes. I am. Look, there I am. Very sunburnt. Next to a Mr. Senator Sanders. Yeah, that was kind of a fun treat. I like staring into the sun and Bernie over here.
And we didn't plan your arrival. That was just here.
Back when I was under the Golden Dome, but outside in front.
Good memories, right? Minus the sun.
Minus the sun.
Well, great. Just for some table setting here, it's Tuesday.
It is.
And so you just came from the State House. What has your day looked like so far? Do you want to walk us through it?
Yeah, well, I got to the State House at 8 a.m. because I like to get there bright and early, and I had an agenda-setting meeting, got a little delayed, so I then had a meeting with Legislative Counsel, who are the folks who help write bills for us, and then I had a committee meeting. I left committee, because we're often double-booked, to go present a bill in Judiciary, then went back to Senate Transportation, which, as you noted, I'm the vice chair of, then had a Democratic Senate caucus meeting. We had cupcakes. That was really, it's our Senate Pro Tem Phil Baruth's birthday.
Oh, very cool.
So we had cupcakes. Then we had Senate Government Operations and had that committee meeting and then came here. So yeah, it's jam-packed.
busy day.
Yeah.
Do you drink a lot of caffeine?
I do. I do drink. I have a coffee in the morning, and then I also have a coffee at like 2:30 every day. It's like my
The afternoon. Correct.
it should get me through that. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Right there
So,
with you.
well, perfectly caffeinated right now.
Oh, good. So this is perfect.
This is excellent.
Okay, great. And could you describe the vibes of the State House currently? Is there anything we should know?
The vibes of the State House right now are kind of like we're starting up, we're getting there, we're a month in. I'd say the energy is a little off because we're experiencing collectively the impact of the federal picture right now. So there's a little bit of unexpected tension that I probably could have predicted going into the year, but feels like we're all a little more stressed out.
Okay.
It feels a little bit like the tension post-flooding, where you're not quite sure where your footing is on any issue because it could change.
Right.
Which is stressful for universally for everyone, whether you're a staff member, an advocate group, or an elected leader.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I'm hearing is we have our work cut out for us this session.
Perhaps the vibes are it.
Okay, great. Well, that's good to be aware of. And you did mention it's already February, which
It
means
is.
somehow the legislature has been in session for over a month.
Yes.
That's wild. Are there any bills that you're feeling particularly excited about that are coming down the pike? If you can speak to that.
Yeah, I certainly can. Well, obviously, property taxes and education finance reform are the elephant in the room.
Mhm.
And I don't serve on any committees that are actually dealing with that work directly. So I'm tracking it, but that's a big part of the work we're doing. There's no bill or legislation that has been introduced yet. To my understanding, there might be something on the House side that would be coming from like the minority leader, Patty McCoy. But we haven't yet seen language on that. So I would say I'm following that bill, whatever form it takes. The two bills that I'm most excited about right now relate to transportation, and that's the Kurtz bill, the Creating a Unified Resilient Transportation System bill, which is in honor of Representative Kurt McCormick, who passed away last year and was a champion for public transportation, bike, ped, all that good stuff. That bill will hopefully be aligned with the T bill or the transportation budget bill. And then the other bill that I'm very interested in is my road noise pollution reduction bill, which is S66, which just got introduced today. But there's a lot of other topics. I used to serve on natural resources, and today we had the introduction of Efficiency Vermont's changing of their charge, that bill that was introduced by Senator Ann Watson, and I'm definitely following that. Very
Okay,
closely.
great.
So yeah.
Wow, staying busy.
Yeah.
Already. And I love that you mentioned transportation because that was actually the first segment of this episode featuring our co-producer Josh. So it's just a whole episode on transportation. And I would love it if we could also pivot briefly to climate, if that's okay with you, because again, it's a big topic. And of course, you are co-chair of the Climate Solutions Caucus, which for our listeners, that is the largest nonpartisan caucus in the entire Vermont General Assembly. So that's a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I actually, last session, we went on tour. We went all around the state talking to community members about certain climate priorities, but also to just get a sense of what Vermonters were feeling, right? And that's something that I think you're really good at doing, just connecting with community. And so I'm wondering if you have any takeaways, maybe 2 or 3, of conversations or things that you've learned in that time connecting with Vermonters over climate over the past year.
Well, I love doing the tour because we in Windsor County, I think we're kind of a blue bubble, both in a green bubble, if you would. So sometimes it feels like I'm not hearing the opposition that my colleagues are flagging. So it's hard for me to articulate answers to those questions because I'm not asked by constituents those specific questions. So when we were out on tour, I really appreciated when we stopped both this year and the last time we did a Keep Vermont Cool tour in St. Johnsbury. Because even though it was, I would say, 2 meetings that had more contentious natures to them, because people were bringing up concerns they had with either the Global Warming Solutions Act or the Clean Heat Standard, it never felt like the questions they were asking were unanswerable. It always felt like there was either a piece of information that was needed to correct misinformation, or kind of a reframing of the problem. I'd say that when we did our event in Springfield, when we went to the campus, even though it was a small but mighty group, I enjoyed seeing that we got folks who were opposing the work that we were doing coming out to have conversations. So I enjoyed that part of the tour. I'd say if you ask most legislators if they enjoyed contentious meetings where people who disagreed showed up, they'd probably say no.
Right.
But I enjoyed those interactions because you learn something new. And it's much better than when I, go to a meeting in Norwich or Woodstock and they say, push harder. I know I need to do that. It's nice to get a little bit more of the feedback on what we can do to improve on the other end.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think our time doing that was incredibly valuable,
Mm-hmm.
right? Just from the human perspective of community building, also in the work that we do. And going on tour isn't the only way that we can build community and build those relationships. And so, of course, I do have to bring up canvassing, right? We got to talk about the summer canvas.
Exactly.
And that's a great example of what canvassing is, because I did want to mention that. That's not a well-known term for everybody, right? So just to clarify, canvassing is knocking on doors, going door to door to talk about certain important issues and also opportunities of involvement, like what folks can do to get involved with those particular issues. So that's sort of VPIRG's bread and butter. We've done that for many years, as you know, Senator White. And so I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to your experience on the summer canvas, and maybe you have some particularly memorable experiences or lessons learned that you'd like to share.
Well, okay, you've also got the experience of knowing what the canvas is like, and I think anyone who has door knocked can understand that you end up meeting so many different people and such a wide range of people that every day is different. So I would say that's my biggest takeaway from canvassing is just meeting, even in one town, 10 people with completely different perspectives and opinions, all on the same street even. But yeah, I was a VPIRG canvasser for many summers, and I had the pleasure of also being a canvas director. And they actually put me on less door knocking, but more waving. I was the head of the street team, which is, we're the real, that's the real deal canvassers, is the street team canvassers, because they would put us out on Church Street. And we would wave people down. I'd have to interrupt some lovely person drinking their coffee at like 11:30 in the mid-afternoon. And I'd go, hi, are you concerned about Vermont's environment? And imagine me going and doing that to you. You would stop, ideally.
Right.
Then that person is trapped because I am so passionate and excited to tell them about.
They can't wait to hear what you have to say.
I have to say. I hand them that clipboard. And by the end of it, they're given, they're a monthly sustainer. And they were immediately friends. So that experience was I can talk to anybody anywhere and I can flip a clipboard around and get someone to sign up for an email list like that. Because I just had to do it so many times. And it breaks you out of that, I think that fear that you have that, if I don't know someone, that means I shouldn't interact with them. Rather, it showed me that actually everybody, for the most part, could have an interesting conversation with you. And they might not end up being a sustainer, but they will end up learning something new, and you might learn something new. So I had a lot of good memories from my time at VPIRG. One of the things I stressed when we went to, is it Camp Dummerston? When you go down and you do like the Southern Vermont trip every year. I've had the pleasure of going and speaking to the canvassers during the summer because it's close to my house. And I always talk about, whenever I've had the chance to talk to them, that the people you meet, like the friends that you make during your summers, actually transcend into later parts of your life if you're lucky. And I mean, I walk around the State House and I can list off easily 5 people who I either directly canvassed with one summer or worked with VPIRG in another way. And that's actually huge because it's this group of largely younger folks who are feeling the same kind of pressing concerns that I am and are engaging with the State House in different ways. So Yeah, it's not just the actual door-to-door canvassing, it's the group of excited, passionate young people who are biking up hills every day that you're with that make it, yeah. I could wax poetic about like canvassing. I would canvass every summer if I could for an issue.
Well, you're being recorded.
I know.
So
I've tried. I know. Well, I do. I still canvass for politics, and it's a lot easier to ask someone to vote for you than it is to ask them for $10 a month for the foreseeable future. So I do
you have the skill set to do any of it.
Yeah.
So that's pretty powerful.
That's pretty good. Yeah, if you're a canvasser, you could easily run for office.
Plug that. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I want to stay on this topic of relationship building for just a little bit longer, because I think that community to community member bridging of gaps is very important. But I think what we should also talk about is the legislator and constituent gap, right?
Yeah.
Because as we know, Vermonters care about a lot of different things. Excuse the pun, but like Vermont's voice, they have a lot of voice, right?
They do.
They care about a lot of issues. And so I'm wondering how we can make folks feel more comfortable reaching out to their legislators and to understand the true value of that, because I think there is some trepidation, some maybe hesitancy in starting to build that relationship because it feels kind of scary.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you have any advice on how folks could best reach out to their legislators.
Oh, that's a really good question. I have a unique situation where I'm very out in the community because I cashier at the Upper Valley Food Co-op, and I also cashier at a retail location, and I just always seem to be at events. So I'm very accessible to the average constituent, and I see less of people being concerned to talk to me or intimidated to talk to me. And I think that is a reflection that I'm a young woman. I'm from the town. I come from a low-income background. So the barrier of distance between me and my typical constituent is much lower. So I also engage on social media, and I get, like today, I posted something about the road noise pollution prevention bill, and I immediately got a bunch of comments from folks, both pro and con. Like, why are you wasting your time on this? And thank goodness you're taking this up. It's the biggest issue affecting my life, you know? So I think some folks feel a level of comfort engaging with me. But if you're in a situation where you don't live in a district where that person is easily accessible, I just say, don't worry about it. Shooting them an email and saying, here's what I would like to see you do is actually what you need to be doing. Like we have to hear from folks to be able to know. Calling them on the phone, texting them, totally appropriate.
And is that effective?
Yes, I would say it's very effective. You'll hear a senator or a representative say, I've heard from everybody. And it's like, they probably heard from like 2 or 3 people. And it feels like everybody. Especially if you're someone in your community who is involved in other issues, whether it's you're on your planning commission or maybe you've supported like a local event. Any of those angles of saying, I'm a community member and this matters to me, very powerful. If you're a small business owner, I mean, that can just, people will be much more responsive. The most effective way that you can reach out to us is be clear that you are a constituent. One of the most challenging parts about being a legislator is when you just get a deluge of people reaching out on any topic. It's hard to sift through, okay, is this person from my district? Is this question relevant to me? And what are they asking me to do? So if you're clear about who you are, where you're from, how they can respond to you, what you want as a response, maybe it's just an email, and what your ask is, that is so helpful. Especially if you're seeing a specific bill that you want to support, giving us the number of the bill, telling us where it is, all good, because there's hundreds of bills that we might be tracking. Yeah. Oh, and I'd say senators can't do resolutions. So I'm just putting that out there. If you're a Windsor County constituent and you've emailed me about a resolution, only House members can do them. No senators.
That's good to know.
So I keep having to turn people down. But
okay.
So yeah, making sure that you're making the right ask.
Clarity, detail, having an ask or call to action and just doing it.
And just
right?
doing it.
Just
yeah.
sending the email, making the call.
Yeah.
It's valuable.
And if you have like a specific group that's in the state house, if you want to reference them, like if it's a VPIRG issue, for example, and you know that there's some information that would be relevant, you can say, here's who I would talk to. Same could be said for any issue. If you know that there's someone who's in the building who can help advocate consistently, also note how we can get in touch with them. That's really helpful.
Great. That's awesome advice. Thank you. Okay. So Senator White,
Yes.
in the midst of our interviews, I like to break it up with a brief activity or game. So this one I'm calling District Delights, and it's an opportunity for you to talk about your favorite places in your district. So what I will do is provide a few prompts, and then you can share your district delights. Does that sound good?
Sounds amazing.
All right, so let's jump in with Senator White's District Delights. All right, so first, best place to grab a bite to eat.
Okay, so I wrote this down because this is controversial.
Okay.
So I picked 2 because I don't want to, I don't want to make any enemies. So if you're just getting a quick bite to eat or even a little bit of a sit-down meal, I would say the Windsor Station, which is in Windsor, Vermont, the place the Constitution was signed. Delicious. I have a gift card I have to use there. Then the second place, if you want like the farm to table experience, and I know it's not quite a quick bite to eat, but Cloudland Farms and Pomfret, they're seasonal. You have to get a reservation way in advance, but you're like eating food there with the cows walking in the pasture across from you.
Wow.
We do every anniversary dinner there if we can. But so those would be my 2.
Okay. Do either of those places have vegetarian options?
Very much so to Cloudland Farms and Windsor Station. I believe so. I could get. They have options.
I'll have to make my way down to that.
Yeah.
All right. Best place for a morning latte.
Okay. Again, had to pick 2 because my original list was like all White River Junction because I'm biased. First Branch Coffee, they're good, and then Cafe Cappadocia is my number 1, and they're new to White River Junction. They are associated with the Tucker Box, which is our Turkish food restaurant, and you can get a golden milk latte there that just will change your world.
Those are wildly good. All right, good to know. All right, best place to cuddle up with a good book.
Okay, I picked 3. I can't limit myself, guys. This is too bad. So let's say you're buying this book that you need to cuddle up with. It's Yankee Bookstore in Woodstock. Love them. Great selection. And if you're actually literally you want to cuddle up and like be snuggling with the book, my suggestions are the Norman Williams Library, which you can buy a book at Yankee Bookstore and walk to, which is a library, or the Quechee Library, which my brother works at. So that's a plug for George White and the Quechee Library.
I like that you took that one literally. You're physically cuddled up.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe a blanket.
Yes.
Your coffee.
Yeah.
That you just got at the cafe.
Exactly. They have great armchairs at the Quechee Library. You can sit, people read the paper. It's very nice.
I love it. Great. All right. Best place to pick up local produce.
Well, if you don't know my answer to this,
I know it.
It's the Upper Valley Food Co-op, the Hippie Co-op, the Apple Co-op, the Real Deal Co-op in downtown White River Junction. I obviously cashier there. We do have the best produce. I mean, Robert in the produce department, it's almost exclusively local. It's all seasonal. That's our bread and butter.
Amazing. All right. Best place to have fun with friends.
Okay, Babe's Bar. I only picked 1 for this. It was Babe's Bar. If you know Babe's Bar in Bethel, it is the spot. I'm so grateful that we have Babe's Bar in our district.
I gotta get over there.
You do.
I haven't been. I wanted to, but there was a snowstorm. It was a whole thing. I'll get there. But thank you for the reminder.
Okay. And they do mocktails. So I don't drink alcohol. And they do, like, just to be clear, this is a good.
I love a mocktail.
NA, yeah.
Okay. That's huge. Thank you. All right. That's what I have for my prompts. Do you have any honorable mentions? Anything I left out?
Okay. You missed consignment stores and like
my
thrift
bad.
stores. That's, I mean, obvious.
That's big. That's
Fashion is a big part of my life. So the go-to spot is Revolution in downtown White River Junction.
Okay.
There you go. That's my consignment store suggestion.
Well, thank you, Senator White. This has been District Delights with Senator White. So you mentioned in our last little segment there that fashion's very important to you.
I did.
And so I need to bring this up because something that's very important to me is your Outfit of the Day series on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
I truly admire how you show up to the State House in style literally every day, knowing how early it is you have to wake up. So what I think we should do is I'm going to explain to our listeners what I'm wearing.
Okay.
And if you'd like to do the same, you can. But I'm going to explain what I have today, and you can let me know if it gets the Senator White Outfit of the Day stamp of approval. And you can be harsh. That's okay. I want the honest.
You want the honest opinion.
Okay. So for our listeners, right now I'm wearing what I like to refer to as my compost sweater. That's because it has a lot of earthy tones, some browns, some greens, some beiges. We're going to ignore the blues because that's not very composty, but I like the natural tones.
Yes.
And now, Senator White, I know what you're thinking. No, this did not come from Kohl's because I do often get my dress pants from Kohl's, and we've talked about this.
This is
I'm sure.
This is very specific. This is a niche. This is a niche reference.
But I just need you to know it didn't come from Kohl's. It actually came from a place called Slowpoke, which is in Berry City. It is a queer-owned consignment shop. Talked about thrifting and all of that good stuff. Good place to go for your thrifting needs and desires. Yes. Pants, you know what? I don't know where these came from.
Could have been Kohl's.
I don't know. But they're these nice little beige, khaki-colored, what do you call these?
Cargo pants? Yeah.
Lots of pockets. Great for utility purposes. I can carry lots of things in these pockets.
Small clipboard.
Yeah. And then we've got, what do we have here for shoes? We've got the vegan Oxfords by Doc Martens and some darn tough socks because that's a true Vermont staple, right? Finally, I've got this little necklace that looks like the shape of Vermont, and that's why I'm wearing it. And that's really all I have. That's the best I could do for today.
Okay.
And I'd like your rating.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna do a star system. So it's a 1 star through 5 stars.
That's so specific. Okay.
Or actually we could do like 1 golden dome to 5 golden domes.
Oh, I love that.
Okay. And I would give you a 4.5 golden dome.
Okay.
And the reason you've been deducted half a golden dome is because where are those pants from? Are they fast fashion? Because
Oh gosh, I hope not.
that would really, but we don't know.
That's
So-
true. They were a Christmas gift, so I'll have to follow up with a relative,
Sure.
and I'll get that information over to you.
Well, I love that. I mean, the outfits of the day thing, it's people really do enjoy talking about how they're presenting themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it does matter because how you are perceived by the world is honestly how people will make decisions about you in a particular position of power. Right. It's unfortunate that that's the way our society works, but I've always had fun with it. And I also like that your sweater is the compost sweater. I think that did affect my ratings.
Okay. That's good to know.
Yeah.
And I love your outfit too. I saw that you did already post about it on Instagram, so this is not breaking news,
Yes.
but it's very nice.
Yeah. I got this actually. This is MM LaFleur, and they did a women in elected office get free clothing thing.
Wow.
Yeah, you got 2 free outfits, and I have signed up for that for the last 3 years. I've gotten free clothing from them.
That's amazing.
So yeah, and every now and again, there's another woman in the State House who will wear one of the free outfits because many of us signed up. So
I love that. I had no
But
idea.
this is
Very cool.
this is like my Sopranos suit.
Okay.
This is when I want to do business. Like today, we were talking about a purchase and use tax exemption. I was doing business today.
I see.
So,
And what color would you describe this as for our listeners?
plum.
Plum. Perfect.
Plum.
It's a lovely plum.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
Yep.
I feel like that last question or conversation,
Mm.
whatever we want to call that, sort of spoke to our millennial nature a bit. And
did.
fun fact, we're both 30 and we're both on Instagram. Like it is what it is, right? But I think there's actually some utility in talking about your age,
Ooh.
right? Because you've accomplished an atypical amount for your age in the world of politics. Like it's truly inspirational. And so just talking back through your history a little bit, at the age of 20, you ran for and were elected to your local select board. You served there for 2 terms. And then as we know, in 2018, you were then elected as Vermont State Representative. And the rest is unwritten, right? You've been in the State House ever since.
Yes.
And we've talked about some of the committees and the caucuses and all of the things that you're involved with. And I just don't know how you've accomplished so much in such a short period of time. I'm still relatively young, right?
You are young.
Still
We're
young.
We are young.
We're still young, right? But I think for Vermonters who are much younger than me, right, they're looking to you as inspiration because maybe they're wanting to pursue politics and you're like this guiding light for them. So, long way of getting to the question, but what advice do you have for Vermonters who are looking to pursue a similar career path?
Well, you're an amazing hype woman. So I'm getting, this is why I love going on tour with you, like any of your standard white. I originally, when I ran for office when I was 20, ran because I had a good mentor who told me that instead of trying to be on the planning commission, which was where I wanted to go, that I should try to run for office because the worst case scenario was that I wasn't going to be elected. And that really shifted my perspective when I was 20, because I thought, what's the worst thing that can happen? And then I actually tried. Like, I knocked on doors, I called people, I raised money, I got yard signs, I put in effort, and that was not necessarily present with the other candidates in the race. So I learned very quickly that it actually didn't take that much additional effort and that I had the skill set to be successful to run for office. And after that, I basically built, like you would any career, up over time. There was a time when I thought I, instead of running for select board, should run for state senate. And that was far before I ran or was a state senator today.
Wow.
But I had this belief that if you're young, you have to like run at the biggest, baddest thing right away. And then I got very good advice from folks who were in it who said, you got to pace yourself. So I would say my big advice for anyone who's thinking about getting involved is do start local. Run for justice of the peace, perhaps. Think about being on your select board or your energy committee or volunteering for like the garden club. Because there are so many mistakes I made as a select woman that the only time I would ever want to make those mistakes is when I had not a lot of power. When I made comments or I didn't do as much homework as I might have wanted to, that I learned that I needed to do over time. It's so much better to learn and have mistakes when you're younger in a smaller arena than it is to like shoot for the stars, I think, and not have the experience or ability to succeed. And that was a lesson that a lot of older folks were trying to tell me at the time that only I learned through experience. Like there's so many mistakes I made that I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I'm not making them now because I did them on a small stage.
Right.
So that would be my big advice. The other thing I would say, and I ask so many young women to run for office, it's a bit of a joke that if you are my friend, you can expect that I will ask you to run for office. Like I'm going to sit you down one day and be like, hey, and I don't know if I've actually done that to you yet, but it's pretty, you're kind of involved already, but
I'm a little bit.
You're a little busy these days. Maybe a conflict. But I do honestly try to get any young woman who's like got her eyes up. I'm like, you need to run for office because the level of skill that you need to succeed in public office is a lot lower than you might expect. And when the old boys club is working, the way that they're getting their candidates is they're talking to their friends. Like it's not anything malicious in my view. It's that's who they hang out with. That's who they see at the VFW. That's who they go golfing with. And they see those leadership qualities in their friends. So I do think it's our job to ask our friends and people in our age group to run for office and step up. Because in the same way that old boys network has been able to stay in power, it's now our opportunity to look around and invite our friends to do it. So I'd say even if you're not going to run for office, you should think about who in your life needs to be given a little like oomph to run. So
that's great advice. And correct me if I'm wrong, but we're not equally represented right now in state or national politics, right?
Yeah, it's surprising to me how much time the Vermont legislator spends talking about how we need to have a demographics shift and young people and young families be supported for the number of people who don't actually represent that group of people to be serving. And I think that's actually why we keep fumbling on those questions. It's great that we have so many folks who are retired who serve. Obviously, I've learned a lot from folks who are in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who I've served with. But that difference generationally, having such a gap, leads to policies not having the full voice of that group of people heard, just functionally. So I do hope we can see more young folks, people with children, people who are working age in the legislature. And that's a goal of mine. When I left the state rep position and ran for the Senate, it was critical for me to identify someone who I felt reflected the same values that I had, but also could bring a different generational perspective. Because Hartford has shown that they'll elect a young woman. So I was like, I know I can get another one in. So I recruited Representative Esme Cole to run for the seat. And she was hesitant at first, but after multiple coffee meetings, she agreed. So I would say it's about legacy planning, especially for legislators who are older if they're retiring. That's a big conversation I have with my colleagues is if you're going to be taking the time to think through your own retirement, let's identify a younger person in the community who shows promise, who we can pass the torch to.
I love that.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing that.
Well, I looked out. I got good. Esme is such a joy to work with.
Yeah.
And she's been a big part of universal school meals and that legislation. So I feel really lucky that we've got a good team for our area.
Oh, that's great. Thank you again. So what I'm also curious about, because you've just spoken to some of the work that you do, and there's a lot of it, and I'm constantly wondering how legislators are able to maintain their stamina, their energy throughout the session, because the days are long, you're connecting with tons of people for relatively little pay, might I add, but that's maybe better served for a different episode. And it's so much to do in a short period of time. So I feel like legislators must always be on that brink of burnout, possibly, right? And so I'm wondering how you in particular find opportunities for pockets of joy and relaxation and rest.
Oh, I like that question a lot. Because when I started in the legislature, I was still actively drinking. That was a big part of my life. And very quickly into the legislative experience, it was so stressful that I relied heavily on alcohol. So my big transition for me as an elected official was I couldn't drink anymore. That was just no longer a part of my life. So that honestly is what keeps me going. Is there are so many times that I think you want to lean on either a substance or your phone or other bad habits, and being able to say, I'm not going to degrade because of stress into those bad habits is my number one tool. So that means that I am really careful about the events I attend. I say no to a lot more things than when I started. I went to every single event when I was first elected, and now I limit myself. Luckily, I'm married to an absolutely incredible guy who makes my lunches. And makes me like a smoothie in the morning every day.
Send you smoothies.
She's a smoothie.
They look great.
Yes. And my mom now lives with us, so she helps around the house. Like I have like a team that makes sure that I have what I need to be successful. And that's I don't know how anyone does it without having that huge support system behind them. And I'd say the big pockets of joy that I get throughout the day is when I get to see constituents. Like today, the Hartford Memorial Middle School students were in the cafeteria, and I saw a student that I've, spent time with down in our district, and just seeing her and how excited she was and talking about like bag lunches. It was like, okay, only in Montpelier would I run into someone in that way. So
And it filled your cup.
it filled my cup completely. I was like, this is exactly what I needed, is a bunch of like Hartford middle school girls to be like, it's great to see you.
And maybe a smoothie.
And maybe a smoothie to keep you going. Chia seeds.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
But
Great.
we do, I'd say as legislators, we do burn out. There's a reason why we've had mass turnover in the last few years, and COVID especially really took a lot of the passion out of people because it was extremely long hours. So that's a good point.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we can do more to address that. I like what you said about boundary setting. There's little things that we can implement, right? But it's hard in the reality of it. So important to have the conversation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I've got one more question for you.
Ooh.
And this might end the episode on a light note or a heavy note. I'm not too sure. But I think it's important to address the fact that there is truly a lot going on throughout the world. And I think during times like these, where there's sort of political turbulence, folks get a little bit concerned, worried, anxious, scared, right? And I think that's valid. And I think in those times, we look to our elected leaders for reassurance and guidance. And so, at least for me, I want to know, do these folks feel like everything is going to be okay? And so I'm going to ask you, Senator White, honestly, do you feel like everything is going to be okay?
I don't think everything is going to be okay. I'll just put that out there.
Okay.
But what has been keeping me going is that Vermont prepared for this moment in a way that most other states actually did not prepare for this moment. We saw, and obviously I'm alluding to the Trump administration, but it might be other factors that people are thinking about, whether or not it's international strife or there's all sorts of conversations to be had there. But Vermont passed a constitutional amendment to protect reproductive liberty and LGBTQIA plus healthcare. I remember when we were working on that constitutional amendment, the big concern or criticism I heard was, don't worry about it. You don't need to do this. It's not necessary. And there's so many of those decisions, whether or not it was in our fair and impartial policing work that we did or setting up the Office of Racial Equity, all of that work that we were told time and time again, you don't need this. It's not necessary. Why are you wasting time on it? And now it's a foundation for protecting Vermonters. So I would say it's not going to be okay for us as a nation. However, my biggest bright spot is that I've already seen Vermonters step up and seek to create a safe lifeboat here in our own state. Climate change, obviously a huge issue for me. And the level of disappointment I have in what is happening to the EPA and just our national park system and this drill baby drill idea being so disheartening. The thing that's keeping me going is at the local level, there's a lot we can still do and decisions that we as individuals can make that can help us separate from that national movement. So it's not going to be okay, but I think Vermont is prepared. And if there's one place that I would like to be during this time, it's here.
I agree with you. Yeah. Thank you for that, for grounding us in that reality, but also reminding us that Vermont is resilient.
Yeah.
And like you said, we've been preparing for this moment and we're working through it together, right?
Yeah. And I'd say Vermonters are the most, of any group of people, when I think about bipartisanship, we are able to do it functionally in a way that you don't necessarily see in other states. And I was really happy to hear that some of the baseline values that I have, I was hearing said by people across the aisle in opposition to what we are hearing from the federal administration. So that's really good for me to hear, is when colleagues, no matter what side of the aisle they're on, saying, trans youth should be valued. We're not going to roll back environmental protections. We're not going to deport our neighbors and friends. Like all of those grounding issues, I feel like Vermonters are pretty secure on, which makes me feel optimistic.
Yeah, reassuring. Thank you. All right. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot in this past session here. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on that you feel like maybe I've missed?
Oh, well, I would just say that I am grateful to VPIRG. I know you guys do a lot of different issues, but the foundational part of the work that you do with having an advocate in the building, I think we overlook all the time, because VPIRG has a paid person who shows up to be in the State House to talk about issues that affect Vermonters that you have built a consensus around. There's no other organization that does that that's not specific to one issue. And that's so helpful to me as a legislator. When I was canvassing, I didn't understand why does it matter that Ben Edgerly Walsh is in the state house. But now as a senator, I'm like, thank goodness you have this team of people who are supporting us because we don't have staff. And I just end with thank you for being the support for the Climate Solutions Caucus.
Of course.
You make sure that our people are fit and happy and show up on time, and that's what makes it work. So I'm really grateful for the work that you guys are doing too.
Aw, well, right back at you. Thank you so much for all that you do in the State House and beyond.
Yay.
Alrighty, well, I'll let you get back to it.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in for this conversation with Senator Becca White. I'd like to pivot now for just a moment because we've got some listener mail. As I mentioned in last week's episode, we want to hear your stories and your thoughts and your ideas, so that's what we're going to do right now. So Lilith in Burlington asks, "Hey Jordan, cool podcast. I have seen more Border Patrol vehicles around town in the past few weeks than I have ever seen in the past few years. What's up with that? Are the new Trump policies really that focused on the Canadian border?" Well, Lilith, that's a great question, and one we'll be addressing in our next podcast episode, where we talk all about immigration. So I'm hoping you and others will be tuning in. But for today, that's our episode. If you liked what you heard and you want to learn more, feel free to visit us at VPIRG.org. You can also get on our mailing lists and follow us on social media. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and rate us 5 stars. Again, if you have questions, ideas, thoughts for future episodes, please reach out to me at jheiden@vpirg.org. That's JHEIDEN@VPIRG.org. I'd like to give a special shout out to my co-producers, Josh and Elijah. And again, I'm Jordan Heiden, and you've been listening to Vermont's Voice. Take care and talk soon.